When we left off with the Industrial Revolution notes, we first talked about, in the first set of notes, we talked about what the industrialization life was like before industrialization, what life was like in England especially. And so we talked about what is the Industrial Revolution, the period from 1750 to 1850, where everything is changing, and especially in technology and agriculture and manufacturing, and it's going to have a very big effect on social, economic, and cultural conditions of the time. So what we want to look at now is why industrialization began in England first. And the big answer is because it could. There are 7 things that you need to have that we're going to talk about each one of these, so don't write them down yet. You need to have all 7 of these together in order to have an industrial revolution. And so the countries that have all 7 things are going to be able to industrialize, and the countries that are missing 1 or 2 or have none of them are not going to be able to industrialize as well. So the first thing, and this correlates with the number 1, you can see the number up in the corner correlates with your note sheet, is having rich natural resources. Okay, having coal, having wool, having glass, having iron, all of those things that you can then use in order to produce products. Now, England didn't have everything in England. Originally, they had the wool and the coal, and so they were able to start in the textile manufacturing. But eventually, that's why they're going to go find colonies to be able to get other natural resources. They're going to go into the Congo and parts of Africa in order to get gold, and in order to get rubber, and in order to get oil and things like that. So natural resources are the first thing that you need. The second thing that you need is to have very efficient farms. And the way you do this is through what they call the enclosure movement. You want farms to produce more food. If you have more food, you can have a larger population. So you can see how England is going to end up having lots of farms enclosed, especially in the middle of the country, where they have the best farmland. And so pre-enclosure, farmland's going to look like this. It's all very open, there are no fences, the animals can move around a lot, and a lot of it is public land. So the farmers, the small farmers, can actually put their animals on other land rather than just the private land. When you enclose land, you turn public land into private land and you fence it all in. So you can see the fences that they've created. A lot of the times you can pull rocks out of the field and make fences that way, or you build fences with wood, or you plant shrubbery, whatever, bushes, whatever kind of thing you want to do. But the reason that they do this, and so on your notes, you want to pause the video, draw a picture of what you think the English countryside looks like pre-enclosure in the box called pre, and then draw a picture of what enclosed land looks like in the box labeled post. Once you've done that, then continue on. So what is the actual enclosure movement? Well, it's a movement in England where the landowners want larger farms to increase farming productivity, to have more food produced. And so Parliament, their legislative body, is going to pass laws allowing landowners to take over and fence in private and common lands. So all of that common land where the small little farmers or the tenants on the landowner's property could keep their own personal cows is now going to get closed in and part of the landowner's property. Now, it makes farming much more efficient, but at the same time, it's going to kick off a lot of these small farmers in the area, which transforms rural Great Britain and increases the movement of people to cities. So a lot of small farmers are going to leave their farms and move into the cities. This relates directly, having more food, to the third thing you need, which is a population growth. Okay, so you need more food in order to have more people. So all those improvements in farming is going to lead to more food. More food led to living longer and also more people able to live. Our population in England is going to grow from about 5 million in 1700 to about 9 million in 1800 and continue to grow after that, which means you have more workers for the factories that are being produced. The fourth thing that you need is money, which we also call capital or wealth used to create more wealth. So having money available to invest in the machines and the raw materials means that you can build factories and you can buy the machines and hire workers and start industrializing. The fifth thing that you need we call innovation or new ideas, okay, building machines that are going to bring change. So a couple of the machines that we build, the first big one is going to be the steam engine. We're also going to see a spinning jenny, which allows one person to create multiple threads rather than just one thread. And we're going to see shuttle looms, like this one, where the shuttle can move by itself on the loom rather than a person having to move it. And so these things All these machines and the more machines that are invented are going to help move us from the domestic system where we're doing everything at home. You can see the little girl is cleaning everything at the fireplace, and then the woman is spinning the thread, and then the grandmother sitting down is, organizing the thread so that they can sell the thread to a weaver. We're going to start to go from this to the factory, where they have lots of big machines, and you can see all the people working. You can see the heads down the row. Okay, each person at a machine, and they can produce much more product, more cloth faster. So factories are going to be created, like this one here in Syracuse. Okay, eventually the Industrial Revolution starts in England. Eventually, later on, it'll move to America. We'll talk about that later in this unit. But factories are built because textile machines become too large and costly for use at home. So if you have that 2-room house like we talked about before, where your 10-member family sleeps in one room and lives in the other room, and now you have to have a big machine in order to keep up with the factories, it's not going to be possible. And so they're going to start to build factories. Now, most factories are initially located by water, and they're going to use the water for power, like a water wheel, because steam engines aren't big in powering machines yet. We'll get there eventually. But factories are where everything's going, and we're going to see a lot of towns grow as more factories are developed, and people move from farms to cities and start working in the factories. And it's going to change the way life is run. We'll talk about that in the next set of notes. So the 6th thing you need is good transportation network, from water to the railroads to actual roads. Okay, England has good harbors, so they can bring in things from overseas, and they can send things out from overseas. They have a very large network of rivers that flow year-round, so they can power the machines in the factories originally, before they used steam engines. They can also put boats on these rivers, okay, in order to carry things, because you can carry more on a boat than you can on a cart on a road. They have a very extensive canal system to help connect the rivers together where they aren't naturally connected. And then they also build the first railway system in England. And that's going to be a big part of this Industrial Revolution, is the railroad system. So if you've never seen a canal, they look kind of like this. Okay, there might be a houseboat on them if people are living in them. But generally on canals, you can put a lot of stuff on a boat, more so than a cart. And then either a donkey or a horse, or sometimes people use a rope. You can kind of see the rope from the bow of this ship over to the tow path, this little path over here on the right, and pull the barge along. And it's not running water, so you're not pulling against a current, which makes it really easy to pull and a lot easier to move large amounts of stuff. Eventually, we end up getting a railroad. The first railroad ran at an amazing speed of 24 miles an hour. It's gotten a lot faster since then. But this is going to help move people. It's going to help move raw materials and products all across the country and supply our factories. And then the last thing we need is markets to sell to. Okay, and the idea of mercantilism, where our colonies are enhancing our mother system. Okay, we need to have colonies to get raw materials, but we also need to have colonies to sell the finished products back to. Because what's the point of making products if you're not going to sell them? You're not going to make any money that way, and you're going to go bust. So we need to have these markets. And England has lots of markets because the sun never sets on the British Empire. They have so many colonies around the world. Okay, you can see Egypt and India and Canada and Jamaica, Cyprus, Gibraltar, Ireland, Borsland, which is South Africa, Malta. All of these areas, here's our map, they have as possible places where they can ship the products to that are made in the United Kingdom and sell them and make a lot of money that way. They can also get raw materials. They can get cotton from Egypt or India. They can get coal from Australia. They can get spices from Singapore and Indonesia and British New Guinea. They can get gold from South Africa or Nigeria. They can get spices from British Guiana. They can get timber from Canada. And so all of this stuff that they need can be shipped to the United Kingdom through their amazing navy, and then and protected by their navy, and then they ship the finished products back and sell them for a higher price. So the 7 things that you need, again, are all interrelated. You can't take one out and have the rest of it work. On your notes, I would highly advise that you take this picture and you draw it in the blank spot on the very back, on the last page or on the very back, so that way you see how they're interrelated. So without natural resources, you can't make anything. Without markets, you can't sell anything, and therefore you're not going to make anything. Without innovation or new inventions, you're not going to have any new inventions to create your products. Without transportation, you can't move the raw materials to the factory and the finished products to the markets. Without wealth, you can't buy the new machines that you need. You can't buy the raw materials. Without a large population, you don't have the workers. Without efficient farms, you don't have a large population and therefore lots of workers. And so you have to have every single thing. And so England had all 7 things, and eventually America will have all 7 things. But some countries never have them. So, for example, if you think of Africa, like the Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, has natural resources. That's where we get a lot of rubber from that then goes into making tires and the belts for your car and all that kind of stuff, and rubber bands. And they have the natural resources and they have a large population, but they don't have the wealth to invest it. They don't have the transportation system to set it up. They don't have the new inventions or innovation in order to create the machines and put the factories there. And so they're not going to become industrialized. They're going to remain a source for natural resources, but not end up as a wealthy nation of their own. As opposed to America, end up having all 7 of these and end up becoming industrialized in the 1800s, a little bit later, maybe 100 years after Britain does. So, how does this change with British iron production? You can see how from 1750 to 1870 it's increasing a lot. Okay, they're mining more iron to be used for their railroads and used for machinery and used for building factories and products. Coal mining is also going to increase, and this is a question on your notes. Okay, from between 1800 and 1914, okay, there's going to be I believe this looks a little off from 1 ton of coal. I think it should be like 1,000 tons. But just notice that it's increasing along with the number of miners. So you want to put a general statement of that. And then textile factories are also going to increase, not only the number of textile factories, but the number of looms in the factories. And so we're going to have bigger factories, and so they're basically producing cloth for almost the entire world, which is going to be crazy. And then I want you to think of some questions. Okay, so take a second, read through the questions. How did the Industrial Revolution begin in England? Okay, what allowed England to become industrialized but not other countries? What do you need to have to industrialize? And then what does this mean for competition between empires? So I want you to take a second and think about this and write something down. Stop the video until you have something written down, and then come back and we'll go through it. So the Industrial Revolution began in England because they had all 7 components. They had natural resources, they had transportation, they had wealth, they had innovation, they had efficient farms, they had a large population, and had, which is the one I'm forgetting? Markets. They had markets to sell to. So you've got to know all 7 things off the top of your head. And then what does this mean for competition between empires? Well, empires are now going to compete for colonies to supply raw materials and to become markets, and they're going to compete for colonies to have large populations and supply factories with workers, and all of these things, because money, wealth equals power in our mercantilist world, and so therefore they want to compete for all of these things that produce wealth and therefore become the most powerful empire in the world, which is what Britain becomes for a very long time. So that ends our notes session. Have a great day.